countries that otherwise are a rich tapestry of ethnic, cultural, linguistic, and religious diversity. We know about the unresolved land and maritime border disputes, the high tensions and flare-ups between heavily armed forces, and the risks of conflict escalation. The combined Asian standing armies is almost half the combined force of Africa, Latin America, and Western allies. We can indulge in reading about the vast array of weapons at the disposal of Asian powers. It is mind-boggling. It should help us all not to forget past catastrophes, past wars in Asia, and the catastrophic consequences of human lives lost and destruction of infrastructure. The past wars in Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, the Khmer Rouge killing fields, the never-ending wars in Afghanistan, Myanmar, Yemen, etc., should remind all about the cause of wars. In our region, let's imagine scenarios of miscalculation in the Korean Peninsula or in South China Sea. Let's imagine a nervous pilot flying over and through contested South China Sea, firing missiles at a perceived hostile aircraft. Hopefully, there is a system of communication between military and political leaders that may be promptly activated to clarify and de-escalate the crisis. Consultations on the code of conduct in the South China Sea should be intensified. Active dialogue and bilateral negotiations between claimant states on South China Sea must be intensified, always in good faith and avoiding fait accompli so as to maintain trust. Ideally, in a romantic world, the South China Sea should be a zone of peace and fraternity, regionally managed and free of permanent military installations. I wonder if, in the euphoric days of the dismantling of the Berlin Wall and the Warsaw Pact, NATO planners, dealing with extreme and understandable pressures from the newly liberated Soviet captive states, demanding to join the EU and NATO, did ask themselves how far, how deep NATO can encroach into Russia's legitimate security arc. I wonder if, when considering a response to NATO's audacious eastward movement, was President Putin thoroughly briefed about the state of his armed forces, the state of Ukraine's armed forces, equipment, manpower, leadership, and the potential catastrophe unleashed by an invasion of Ukraine? Obviously, we know that considerations of the UN Charter international law are mere details. They never really enter into the reflection and debate within military political circles when considered to invade or launch some military operation. Often we overestimate our own forces, preparedness, our sustained capabilities, underestimate the other side. This has been a historical mistake. Napoleon, Hitler regretted their decision to invade Russia. Leaders of the defunct USSR surely regretted their temerity in invading Afghanistan in 1979. I'm sure US and NATO allies regret not to have retained the Afghanistan lessons of history when they went into Afghanistan 20 years ago. We all know about how countries often react to the suspicion when a neighbor requires new advanced military equipment or sign on defense agreements with a particular neighbor. Dialogue, consultation, transparency are part of conflict prevention syllabus. In view of the above, can we prevent conflict, de-escalate tensions, prevent wars? There are no magic or easy prescriptions, and there are no lacking of national, regional, and multilateral mechanisms. Unfortunately, there are too many examples of how even the world's best mediators fail to bring all parties to dialogue and end the war because those involved did not listen, each side overestimating their own strength. Often politicians do not listen to their generals. The Gaza catastrophe could have been avoided if the Palestinian leadership were united, principled but pragmatic, moderate, conciliatory, focusing on turning Gaza and West Bank into a model of peace and reconciliation, good governance, freedom, prosperity, and respecting Israel's right to live in security. However, Israel also chose to undermine the Palestinian Authority, chose to support radical Islamist Hamas as a way to undermine the two-state solution. And Hamas, supported by Iran, waged a vicious campaign against the Palestinian Authority, expelling it from Gaza, and used Gaza as a springboard to continue to harass Israel. There has to be a way forward. Israel has the right to live in peace and security within the pre-1967 borders. A sovereign Palestinian state is built on the Saudi Arabia peace plan. Iran desists from destabilizing Arab neighbors. Myanmar is another case of failed conflict prevention, but as the Tatmadaw faced real risk of implosion, there is a unique opportunity for a mediated resolution that would prevent the conflict from spiraling out of control. The only valid, still workable proposal on the table is the ASEAN 5-point consensus. We must all seriously reflect on the international community's abysmal failure in preventing the current conflicts, and we must rethink conflict prevention and mediation mechanisms, both regional and at global level, so we can do better in the future. For the ongoing wars, those involved must pause and ask themselves, when will we stop all this death and destruction? Are we going to continue this madness, the further destruction of our cities and the death of our people? Or all sides should agree to a humanitarian pause of at least 6 months to care for the dead, wounded, orphans, reunite families, restart schools, reactivate essential services and economy and international trade. During this period, let mediate to facilitate, to go between, explore ideas for a comprehensive. I apologize that I have past the 10-minute prescribed to me, almost exactly now. Thank you. And I apologize that I don't think I have contributed much to guide you out of the dark tunnel into a beautiful, shining day. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, there'll be a variety of questions asked about that, and I want to certainly ensure that people pick up your call for the so-called intensification of the Code of Conduct discussions. It has been well over a decade since those began, and I hope there will be a good idea on exactly how you intensify it and whether the code as presently drafted can actually serve the purposes that it was initially intended to do. With that, could I invite Minister of the Armed Forces of France, Sébastien Lecornu, to take the floor. Thank you very much, sir. Oui, oui.
Chers amis,
dear friends, it is an honor to be in front of you today in Singapore. I would like to commend the Singapore authorities and thank them for the way they've welcomed us. And also a warm thank you for the organizers of this indispensable meeting. And thank you very much to John as well, who is enough of a friend to facilitate this roundtable. Last year, indeed, I had to skip this meeting to get 413 billion euro for the French defense, and I had missed the meeting. So I hope you will accept my apologies. Improving crisis management with increasing competition. I know for a fact that when speaking, most speakers forget about the main topic and speak about something different. But if you'll allow me, I will try and stop for a few minutes on the topic you've picked for today. It is not a current one, and I think it feeds lots of worries. Maybe, John, you could have been even more careful by suggesting that in this very competitive context, we're able not to hinder what already exists when it comes to crisis management. And if I were to go for a bit of banter, having the French Minister of the Armed Forces a few days before the Olympic Games in Paris is a challenge in and of itself, because we have something that is getting organized in a difficult international context, but with security challenges that still exist. So when I was giving some thought as to what I wanted to say today, the first challenge of the times we are experiencing is selfishness. Selfishness is an easy trait to get for human beings. We are experiencing tough time. Conflicts are more numerous, and the mechanism we already have were designed when the world was more or less at peace. We had more time, we had more money to invest to be better trained and better prepared. And when the situation is getting tougher, there is a reflex in people that is becoming more national and forgetting about the mechanisms. And I'm having a look at Josep Borrell, who's here, and my counterpart from the Netherlands. It's been an actual challenge from COVID to the war in Ukraine to protect unity amongst European countries, but beyond this, making sure that the European political project is giving some results and make sure that we do not get to close our minds. We have managed to do so, but it has been a challenge. And in the Indo-Pacific, this is also a challenge when it comes to humanitarian disasters. Let me remind you of what happened in Vanuatu, in the Tonga. Let's not forget our friends from Papua New Guinea, who are facing a terrible, terrible disaster. And even though competition and wars are coming back, everything that is connected to rising sea levels and climate change in general and civil security that is being challenged, these are challenges that we have in front of us. And no matter our political parties, no matter our own conviction, our populations want us to bring out results, which is why President Macron decided to send a jet, an A400M, from our overseas territory to get some humanitarian goods to Papua New Guinea. We have to make sure that we make these mechanisms more sustainable for the future. And you'll see in the future that very punctual decisions we made are going to become more sustainable and are going to become mechanisms. The second risk is selfishness, but selfishness used as a strategy. A strategy that is out in the open, and it relies on this principle. Considering there is increasing competition, let's not rely on partnerships anymore. And one country, because of its culture, will make sure never to give this up. And it is France on a very precise topic. It is the fight against terrorism. And I want to commend my predecessor, Florence Parly, who is in the room. The 2015 terrorist attack, the fight against terrorism in the Levant, in the Sahel, in Afghanistan. It is clear we have terrorist groups that are reorganizing themselves in a more international jihadist structure. And from 9/11 to today, there's something we have made a lot of headways on. It is the interconnections between intelligence services. And no matter interferences, no matter the differences that we can witness at the UN General Assembly when it comes to the economy or any other topic, there is one topic that shows an actual partnership of all countries. It is the fight against terrorism. But now one needs to ask themselves whether these partnerships for terrorism are still strong as they used to be. As France as a country has been heavily criticized because it was in touch with Moscow and with Russian authorities because of the terrorist attacks that were perpetrated at the Crocus City Hall. But the French intelligence services did have elements that would be elements of proof to get the truth about the attacks. And we have decided, despite the strong differences, to say the least, that we have with Vladimir Putin, to give to the Russian Federation the information we had about the terrorist attack. And this is one very practical example for this roundtable of a partnership that we can have with increasing competition, terrorism, the fight against organized crime. President, Excellency, I was listening to you. Illegal fishing, that is an actual plight in the Northern Pacific, but also in the South Pacific. We will not be able to fight against illegal fishing and what is going on at sea if we do not work together at a very high level. Same goes for drug trafficking, arms trafficking, human trafficking. All that we do to fight against this needs to be protected. And let's not be selfish with technological jumps. Technology is being developed as we speak. And with the topic that was picked for today, artificial intelligence in the future will mean solutions. And for decision makers, but also for NGOs and firms, large companies, solutions and tools to be able to keep moving forward. So states, because of what is going on at the moment, should not hinder partnerships and show a lack of generosity. So I am speaking for France right now, but I'm pretty sure that my European counterparts in the room do agree. Our roadmap has not changed. Fighting against selfishness was my first point, but also fighting against a form of selfishness that would be getting back to the past, and that would be an actual disaster. Third risk, to keep working on the proposals, on the proposal that was given to us. Dear John, we do not have an obligation to get used to this increasing competition. Of course, I'm a French minister and very fond of General de Gaulle at that, who is speaking. But the alignment, the bloc theory, and a world that works that way is not unavoidable. We can avoid this situation. And I think that the 샹그릴라 dialogue is participating in this, but also with the conversations, the more private ones that are happening at all the floors in this hotel. But the Cold War is over, and now this idea of blocks that is moving towards the North Pacific. We are a country of the Pacific with our overseas territories. We are a member of the Security Council of the UN. We know for a fact that a bloc opposing themselves is not a solution. So it is our responsibility to find avenues and new pathways to fight against this logic. And I know that I have gone over time, but let's not try and replace what international organizations do, what ASEAN is doing is moving the right way, but diplomacy is not enough. We need to have very practical ways to make sure we keep these multilateral organizations alive, which is why our French Navy is involved with a lot of ships, a lot of people, a lot of technical steps. The same goes for humanitarian mechanisms, making sure that humanitarian law is abided by. In the Red Sea, we were mentioning maritime security from a very theoretical standpoint. We were maybe thinking about one given sea and realized that it happens in the Red Sea. And now Europe is looking at the Indo-Pacific region with war navies that are now have to act in self-defense to defend trade ships. If we want a better world, we need to make sure that international law is implemented. This also works for UNIFIL at the Lebanese border, where you have French forces working under a UN mandate where we are trying to de-escalate the situation. So if I were to sum up what I've just said, let's not accept any double standards. And this will be my conclusion. As for crisis management with increasingly serious crisis, the solution is in international law, and the fact that double standards are not to be accepted is absolutely key. You had a very good roundtable about nuclear proliferation. Our South Korean colleague will be taking the floor in a few minutes, and I think that nuclear powers have a special responsibility in the fight against proliferation. I'm saying so as a nuclear country. Our American and British friends know so. Our Russian and Chinese friends know so as well. They know that proliferation in North Korea, is also a matter of concern. No double standards. In international law, I could have spoken about Gaza and a number of topics, but this is my contribution for the topic you have chosen for today.
So thank you very much for addressing at speed such a wide array of issues. There's so many things we could pick out from your remarks, but I thought it was interesting you essentially ended with a reflection on the lack of active arms control arrangements, whether in the North Atlantic Theatre, the Greater Middle East Theatre, or indeed the Indo-Pacific. That so-called Cold War habit of regular arms control has entirely dissipated from our lexicon and our activity, and reviving an arms control activity relevant to this region and indeed others, I think, will be one of the tasks for effective crisis management. With that, could I invite the Minister of National Defense of the Republic of Korea? Thank you very much, sir.
Good morning. This is the Minister of National Defense of the Republic of Korea. First of all, I'd like to extend my congratulations to the 21st anniversary of the 샹그릴라 Dialogue. It is my great pleasure to deliver my speech here at the internationally recognized 샹그릴라 Dialogue, the largest security conference in Asia. Allow me to offer my special congratulations and thanks to Executive Chairman Dr. John Chipman, Chief Executive Bastian Gigrich, and the staffs of the IISS, as well as to Senior Minister, His Excellency Teo Chi-hyun, Minister of Defense, His Excellency Ng Eng-hen, and government officials of the Republic. Distinguished guests, recently, the international community is facing complex security crises. The sense of international security crisis is escalating as the war in Ukraine and the Israel-Hamas armed conflict become protracted. In addition, the unconventional security threats such as infectious disease, cyber terrorism, and climate change are deepening the uncertainties. The Indo-Pacific region is no exception to these situations. The intensification of strategic competition and escalation of regional security concerns are strengthening the convergence within blocs and exacerbating conflict composition. Furthermore, conflicts and disputes stemming from historical and geopolitical factors are weakening the will and motivations of the countries in the region to cooperate with each other. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, the situation on the Korean Peninsula is even graver. Despite the strong opposition from the international community, North Korea is continuing to advance its nuclear and missile capabilities. They are developing various missiles that can be used as nuclear delivery measures and have already had 12 missile launches this year alone. On top of that, they launched a rocket using ballistic missile technology that violates UN Security Council resolution, claiming that it was a reconnaissance satellite. North Korea's reckless development of nuclear and missile program, which can strike all the countries represented here, poses an existential threat to us. And as such, it is a direct challenge against the peace in the Indo-Pacific region and the world. Meanwhile, North Korea's development of nuclear and missile program is aggravating the human rights situation in North Korea. The Kim Jong-un regime, obsessed with the development of its nuclear and missile program, is aggravating the lives of its people who have long suffered from food shortage and economic crisis. The human rights crisis and nuclear and missile issues in North Korea all arise from the same root of continued dictatorship. And they are in an inseparable relationship like two sides of a coin. Distinguished guests, today, we see more evidence that the weapons used by Russia to attack Ukraine were illegally imported from North Korea. As a permanent member of the UN Security Council, Russia should serve as a guardian of global peace. Yet, they are receiving weapons from a regime that violates numerous UNSC resolutions. It is an unimaginable extreme self-contradiction and betrayal against the international community. Furthermore, North Korea is expected to accelerate the reinforcement of its military power with the money and technology it received in return for such arms trade. This reckless behavior not only degrades the authority of international rules and norms, but also exacerbates conflict and puts the entire region in danger. The arms trade between Russia and North Korea is a clear violation of UN Security Council resolution and must stop immediately, as it severely threatens the peace on the Korean Peninsula and in the international community. Military cooperation between Russia and North Korea, brought by the war in Ukraine, is not only escalating tensions on the Korean Peninsula by advancing the nuclear and missile capabilities of North Korea, but also affecting the battlefield in Europe. This means that the crisis on Korean Peninsula is no longer a problem limited to the Korean Peninsula, but rather a problem for all of us. The complete denuclearization of North Korea, in accordance with the international non-proliferation regime, is an essential measure to protect the stability not only in the Korean Peninsula, but also of the entire world. All countries should condemn North Korea's illegal actions in one voice and faithfully implement UN Security Council resolutions agreed upon by the international community. A few days ago, North Korea dispersed over 260 waste balloons into our territory under the pretext of responding to Republic of Korea's civilian organizations' humanitarian aid balloons to the north. It is an unimaginably petty and low-grade behavior for a civilized nation. It constitutes inhumane behavior as well as clear and significant violation of the armistice agreement. I take this opportunity to strongly condemn such an action and urge for its immediate cessation. I request the international community's empathy and proactive support in addressing the North Korean issues. Distinguished guests, looking back, the international community has been on a journey since the end of World War II to prevent war caused by unilateral use of force and to protect peace and freedom. And at the heart of this journey was the establishment of the United Nations. The United Nations played a decisive role in founding a free democracy, the Republic of Korea, and in overcoming North Korean invasion, a crisis that was hanging by a thread. The first meaningful task the United Nations carried out for world peace was the approval of the Republic of Korea as a legitimate government and the establishment of the United Nations forces to defend its freedom. Thanks to such efforts from UN and the international community, the Republic of Korea became the one that was most successful among the countries that won independence after World War II in developing the economy and democracy. In this sense, the Republic of Korea today is an exemplary and living proof of cooperation and solidarity, which were the purpose of establishment of the United Nations. Distinguished guests, in December 2022, the ROK government announced a free, open, and prosperous Indo-Pacific strategy and expressed its will to actively promote rule-based international order. The rules-based international order must be protected from attempts to unilaterally change the status quo by force. It is a harmonious order which represents and respects each other's rights and pursues mutual interests. This order is the spirit that has been sought by UN since the establishment post-World War II, the one that has provided the basis of prosperity that the mankind never experienced before. Unfortunately, the rules-based international order is under threat and is falling apart in many parts of the world. The principle of conflict resolution in accordance with international law and through peaceful mechanisms is losing its authority in the face of threat and the use of force. The Republic of Korea will endeavor to protect the spirit of UN and the rules-based international order founded on that ground. We will cooperate with the international community to peacefully resolve North Korea's nuclear issues. Moreover, we will contribute to establishing Indo-Pacific region and furthermore, the creation of a global community in which many countries can develop together through rule-based cooperation. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister. And we all noticed your remarks about the way in which the DPRK was assisting Russia in its prosecution of war in Europe. When we come back to the question and answer period, you might wish to reflect on this particular question, which is that we have heard many reports that